Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Martin with the Women Against Military Madness Solidarity Committee on the Americas, and welcome to our Let's Go to Cuba program. So I thought maybe we should start with just brief introductions, and we can probably go, everybody got the same list. We'll just go down the list. I just told you who I am, and then go ahead, Carla.
Oh, me. I'm Carla, and I was on this recent February trip to Cuba with 5 of my SCOTA pals, and I've been a number of times before. So I know a little something about going to Cuba, but it keeps changing. So we got new information to share. Anyway, I've been a solidarity activist for quite a number of years now here in the Twin Cities.
Brian.
Hey, I'm Brian. I'm with Twin Ports DSA and interested in traveling to Cuba for a first time. I have not been there. I've long been interested in Cuba and supporting the work that's been done there, and so I'd love to go. I wish there was more people here. I thought there would be, but so be it, I guess. So
well, it's recorded, so they can catch it later.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Me?
Yep, you.
Okay, I'm Marcy, and excuse me. I have been to Cuba. I'm trying to figure out, it's either 12 or 13 times. So it's not a new place for me to go to. And I'm a long-term Cuba Solidarity activist and part of the Solidarity Committee of the Americas.
Bob.
Hello, so I'm Bob. I'm a member of DSA like Brian. We have a 2-person international committee on DSA. I've not been to Cuba, but I think I'm pretty well read on Cuba and I've done a lot of international trips and lived in China 4 or 5 years. So I've been around the block.
Okay. Adam?
Hi, my name is Adam. I live up here in the Twin Ports. I work for the Steelworkers Union and involved with a small local group called the Northwood Socialist Collective, and that's kind of why I'm on the call. I went to Cuba maybe 22 years ago. I'm not looking to go again, but I want to let other folks in our group know about this opportunity and hopefully maybe plug in some way. So just kind of here to gather information and help in any way I can. So
Great, thanks, Adam. Good to meet you. Joe?
Okay, Joe Callahan. I'm a longtime peace and justice activist. Been to Cuba about 12 times, and including 5 travel challenges. And I'm retired from Ford Motor Company and Metro Transit.
And Simon?
Hello, everyone. Seems like I was the last one here, and I unfortunately might have to be the first one to leave as well. So, yeah, my name is Simon. Live in Minneapolis. I'm a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and also a proud member of the Solidarity Committee of the Americas. And it was with this crew here that I got to go to Cuba for the first time this winter. So, yeah, happy to be sharing my experience, and happy to, yeah, offline as well. If anyone has other questions or wants to chat, happy to make myself available.
And I think, can you all see, or are they still up? Yes, they are. And in the chat, that really good list of links that Carla has put out and put together, which
I'll have to put it again, Sarah, because apparently it doesn't show up for people who join later.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Okay.
So
Carla is going to put up this really fabulous list of links to tell us.
And I'll put it in the Facebook thing. So Kristen, all the many watchers on
Facebook.
Yeah. Okay, there it is.
All right. So those of us, and I was one of them, went to Cuba back in, was it March? I think it was March. With Proximity Cuba, and it was a time when things were very much in flux in Cuba in terms of what you needed, and even as we traveled, there were papers we didn't have to fill out, papers we did, and the money situation changed. So I would imagine this is going to go on for a while, that things aren't going to stabilize out, which is okay when you're with a trip or with a group, because of course you're kept up to date pretty much, and a lot of it is handled. So with that, I will, Carla, why don't you go ahead and
So I'm
talk about
next. So I was just gonna, well, one thing we're all gonna say, make sure you have a passport and make sure it doesn't expire within 6 months after your trip. So it's not Cuba that wants that, but it's like international flights. They sometimes will turn you down if you don't have your, a passport that's current for a while. So there's that, but okay, it seems like in the last 50 years, every president of the United States has got to do something about Cuba travel. Maybe, and they have to figure out whether they hate Cuba more than the previous president, or maybe like it a little bit better. But so we went through the Obama years where all of a sudden there was this wonderful opportunity that most people could easily travel. And they also freed the last 3 of the Cuban 5, which was a good thing. Then Trump comes along and undoes a whole lot of things. Although he didn't eliminate travel, you could still go in many. They still kept the 12 categories of people, of so-called licenses, and that's still there. But still a lot of things, cutting down back on U.S. flights to any city besides Havana certainly crimped things. And then of course, the pandemic, I think, had as much, maybe more to do with it as what Trump did. Trump also made it prohibited to bring back rum and cigars.
Oh, man.
Biden, in his infinite wisdom, chose to let that one stand because he was worried about us, I don't know, having too much cigars and
Having too much rum.
yeah, that must have been it. And actually, sometimes, you get stopped when you're coming back and asked a few questions, usually nothing serious. But this last time they slid us through passport control so fast because the planes were all late. I really wished I'd brought back some cigars and rum because they didn't check. So, and if you do bring it, they're not going to put you in prison. They're just going to take it away. If you've ever had the experience of pouring out a nice bottle of Havana Club, that's very disheartening. So
I will say one thing about having problems coming back in is for those of you from northern Minnesota. So I one time flew from Thunder Bay to Havana and back. And so I came back through Thunder Bay and I drove down through northern Minnesota to the border crossing at northern Minnesota. And it was the worst time I've ever had coming back. The guy was so freaked out that I had gone to Cuba. So I'm sure because those of you are from that region understand, he kept calling Washington to find out what he was supposed to do. And we were stuck at that checkpoint for an hour and a half. Well, they went through all of our stuff. They took everything we had that wasn't to the letter of the law. I mean, we had chocolate bars and they took those. And so don't go through northern Minnesota if you're thinking about it. That's what I'm warning you. Don't go through Thunder Bay.
One other thing that Trump did, though, that's really nasty, and Biden didn't undo, was proclaim a whole long list of hotels in Cuba. They're prohibited for U.S. travelers to stay in, because at first, there was some talk about they were owned by the military, which is not the case. They have some connection to the Cuban government, and that's what, if you look on the link sheet, there's a link there to what the State Department says about it. They don't say anything about being, but if it's got a link to the Cuban government, or possibly someone in the Cuban Communist Party owns a hotel, which is probably kind of unlikely because I don't think any private people own hotels. So, you know, we got to stay in a hotel, but we were one of the early trips going, you know, to Cuba. But they have an excellent system of B&Bs, casa particulares, they call them private homes. And that really developed over the years because Cuba's had a lot of tourists. And so whoever you work with on your trip will probably put you up in a casa particular, but you never know. And that's the other thing. One of the requirements is you do have to work with a travel agent that is based in the United States. So you can go as a solo traveler. It's a little more difficult to qualify, but you could if you wanted to. But it's a lot more interesting to go with a group because they have access to so many things that you know you wouldn't as a solo traveler. We had a sit-down meeting with the head of Cuban epidemiology, Dr. Duran. Yeah, and I mean that was, you know, visitors here don't get to sit down with Dr. Fauci and find out how we handled the pandemic. So things like that, you know, you get a lot of really good opportunities to meet with leaders of mass organizations, that kind of thing. Tour hospitals if you want. You know, trips are tailored for specific interests, and I've got a list of those in the link sheet that I posted. And there's also some interpretation of the Cuba laws or not the US laws on Cuba and how the regulations affect you. And the travel agencies explain it a lot more clearly. But if you want to look at the State Department, I put them up there too. It's hard to parse out what they're saying. It's all in gobbledygook. So we're partial to groups that do solidarity trips. That's what ours was. Not, you know, it wasn't called a solidarity trip, but what it was essentially. And there are other groups like that, like Witness for Peace, for example, has several upcoming trips. Pastors for Peace, they do a yearly trip bringing humanitarian aid, but they also have other trips if you go to their website, which again I've linked to. Alta Vista is another one. And yeah, so you can find you know, sort of,
Or we could help you find
political
them.
ones.
Yeah.
What?
Or we could help people find them.
Yeah. And by the way, our trip has not gelled yet. We're still waiting to hear back from the organizer we'd like to work with, who is the one who led our trip. So we don't know, but there are a lot of other opportunities. So if you want to go, you know, you should look at the other things that are possible. And a lot of them are stepping up now. But if you look at the links, there's a guy who used to organize trips for National Geographic. So he's got a photography trip, a motorcycle trip, food art trip, all kinds of things that you might be interested in. So permitted hotels, you can't use credit cards, US credit cards in Cuba. It has to be cash unless you have a credit card that's issued by a foreign bank. But one thing that makes it easy is to travel to Cuba is that your travel agent knows all these things and will set them up for you. Like you need a visa, or it's called a tourist card in Cuba, although we aren't tourists because we're forbidden to be, but you know, they let that slide. Anyway, they tell you how to obtain that. Sometimes it's just part of your airline fee. They'll tell you about what the preferred currency is to bring to exchange for Cuban pesos, because that will change from time to time. You probably need a COVID vaccine, they'll tell you, I mean, or a booster. And you need health insurance, but again, that may be folded into your trip price, or you can buy it easily at the airport. So the only thing really you have to do ahead of time is make sure you have a passport. So like I said, you still can't bring back rum and cigars. So if that was your goal, you have to get them somewhere else.
Thanks, Carol. A couple things. Actually, you can see that interview with, or that discussion with Dr. Durant. Carla taped every meeting that we went to. And if you go to the Women Against Military Madness YouTube page, you will see how many, 6 or 7. Wonderful.
10, but it's on the links. So the playlist is on the
So you
link,
can
so
see
you can find it there. Yeah.
And actually, I think when we went, and I don't know if this would change, what they required in terms of COVID was a test. How many hours? 70?
Not anymore. You don't, to go in.
Yeah.
It's to go back to the United States that you need it.
Okay.
And we had to be masked up all the time too, and they've dropped that because they've really got COVID. But
Well, so I don't know if you need it. I don't need it. My point is, I'm not sure you need to show proof of vaccine anymore. Is that true? I mean, I think that,
Right,
yeah,
because
either way.
it changes, and we'll just do whatever the latest requirement is.
yeah. And
but you do have to use it you have to get a test, and you can get it at the airport to go back into the United States.
I think that's been dropped.
yeah, I
actually.
think so. It has been dropped.
Oh, so you don't have to do it for
No.
the US.
Just
Okay.
recently, they just want a vaccine card though. They want to see a vaccination card.
Okay.
You still want to see that?
Oh yeah, you just you would know.
Yeah. All right, Marcy, do you want to go next?
Okay, I kind of just, some of the stuff Carla said I was gonna talk about, but I will talk about some other things. So,
Sorry about that.
one of the things is that the price of going there is pretty expensive. So you need, not the price there, the price of the airplanes. They're more expensive than they used to be. Hopefully it'll start coming down because there are more flights and there are more airlines going to Cuba, but you should be, it's like, I think, what they say, it was like about $500 to go from Miami to Havana. Sometimes it's less, every day is different. You need to have a license, but you don't have to worry about that. Your travel agent will take care of that. There are 2 kinds of licenses: people-to-people licenses and support for the Cuban people licenses. They seem to be meaningless what they are, but they do require them. I'm just trying to think about that kind of stuff. Then there's like things about being in Cuba. Like, for example, I would say you need to have at least, because you can't use your credit cards and you can't, and you have to use euros or Canadian dollars or maybe US dollars. You need to bring a fair amount of money with you, at least $100 a day, so that you have cash with you to pay for whatever you need. And if you want to buy anything for fun, Cuba is not so different than other places. I think people, if you haven't been there, think it's going to be really odd in terms of going to other islands in the Caribbean. It's very different in the sense of its being a socialist country. And what does that mean? It means that there is no real poverty in the sense that we think of poverty. It's not a grinding poverty. People don't have a lot of money, but the government provides food, they provide housing, they provide medical care, they provide education. Everybody gets paid. If you lose your job, you still get money. So it's not like people don't have any money, but they don't have money like here where they have lots of money, so so you see poverty, but it's not a terrible kind of poverty that you see if you go, next door to either the Dominican Republic or Haiti or to any of the other islands or other Latin American countries. And so it's a different feel than going to And actually, that's why I keep going back. Not that specific thing, but I keep going back because I'm so attracted to what life is like in Cuba. I'm attracted to the fact that that they have worked since the beginning of the revolution to end racism. And so there's just a different feel around race relations than in the US or in most other countries. Everybody's really well educated, and I mean really well educated. They have a really excellent educational system, and even if you're doing a job that in the US you wouldn't think somebody would be that educated, people are. And I've had many discussions with people in Cuba who, I wouldn't have thought were that well educated, and they knew everything about everything in the world. And it's a different kind of a educational system where they really want people to be aware of the world, about what's going on around them. And so there's an attraction to me about the fact that Cuba is not I guess that people don't feel oppressed when they're there. And so it's a really great thing to go there just to have that experience, because it's so different than being in the US. You won't see neighborhoods that are totally different than other neighborhoods in terms of the amount of money they have, amount of education they have. And so I think for me, that's why I keep going back all these times. I love the people that I've met. I've met lots of wonderful people over the years and all my trips. And so it's just a really great thing to have lots of people that you can relate to there and enjoy it. In terms of specific things, we can answer questions if people have them. I mean, I know one of the questions always is about Wi-Fi. They have not the best Wi-Fi, but they do have Wi-Fi. So there's a lot of other things, and if you have specific questions, why don't we ask those specific questions? Somebody has their
hand up.
No, somebody doesn't have themselves muted, and there's noise coming.
Yeah,
What kind of noise you're hearing?
there's a little noise in the background.
Yeah, right. So I'm just trying to think about, it's nice. It's a beautiful country. It's warm. You're by the water. You're by the Caribbean. It just feels good to be there and enjoyable. And there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of interesting things to do, and a lot of political things to do there, since everybody on this call is political. So, you really learn about the politics of how Cuba. I think the thing for me that's, I guess, over the many years that I've gone, the first time I went was in the late 1970s. So that's how long I've been going. Is the changes in the country are so thought out. They're not like here where one day we don't have abortion here, it's they really plan and think through what they want. Like they're planning their family code now, which is their second iteration of the family code, which talks about families in Cuba. And so it's really just a great thing to learn about a different way of development of a country and planning. So that's all I have to say.
Does somebody, I can't read my own writing, but there's some Sky something or other, which is a link to go to find out the cheapest. Does somebody remember that link for a cheap airline? Sky. It's in the literature too. I think you'll find that thing, but there's a site to go to. Travelocity is not the one to go to. It's just,
I think,
yeah.
is it perhaps Sky Scanner?
Yeah, Sky Scanner. That's the one. that's the one to go to find.
Little premature to start buying your ticket.
No, but to look at prices, you don't have to just to
They
get a
can
sense of,
change a lot too. so-
yeah,
Yeah.
and to get a sense of what's, going on with them too. So, and just to, whet your appetite
Yeah,
to see that it
Think
is.
about, I'm gonna get on a plane and
Yeah,
go
that's
to
right.
Havana
yeah.
or any of the other cities now, so.
Yeah. Okay, Simon. Go for it. Simon, another one on our trip, as he said.
Yeah, I do not have any prepared remarks like it seemed like Carla and Marcy might have. So yeah, like I said at the beginning, it was my first trip to Cuba. And there's just a couple quick things I want to share. I know we did our report back, and that was really just talking about the different things I experienced as a first time goer, but in terms of like the logistics of traveling, I really appreciated being able to go in a group of Cuba travel veterans, and especially in a solidarity trip, because then there was the sense of, yeah, like you said too, Sarah, like looking at flights, like the part of it, like looking at flights finally kind of made it feel real for me, where I'm like, oh wow, Havana doesn't exist in this like cordoned off Bermuda Triangle of sanctions and blockades and invasions that the US has set up, but like it's an island, and so with dirt and grass and trees and people and a beautiful socialist revolution. So going in this context, going in the context of it being a solidarity trip, and going with people who are experienced, also like helped calm any anxieties that I've had. When Marcy and Joe were both counting in the airport, trying to figure out exactly how many times they had gone and whether it was 13 or 14, it, made me like, okay, this is possible. Yeah. And then also I think another good event that is on the SCOTA Facebook page way back, and also on the WHAM YouTube page is our report back, where you get some fresh reflections from all of us that are more about the content of the trip. I also, a big thing that I was nervous about was the border crossings, both into Cuba and into the US via Miami again. And I think, Marcy has the story of coming back into the US, has multiple stories.
In
as
Minnesota.
in Minnesota, yeah, of border agents giving her a hard time. I know Joe and others do as well. So I was like going through customs by myself. So I had kind of practiced I had asked them on the last couple of days of the trip for advice about like, what do I answer? Got some advice from some other people about how to respond to an interrogation. And coming back into the US, I was shocked because the guy in Miami barely even looked at my passport, just stamped it and slid me along. So I had all this, I almost wanted to blurt out, like it was a trip for education. It was a people to people, I have a visa, but I knew to use caution and not start blurting to a federal police law enforcement. But also what was interesting experience was on the way into Cuba. I did get at customs, I got pulled aside. And one theory I have was just the fact that it was like my first time coming to Cuba, like that in my passport, there was like no Cuba travel. I looked very, maybe, fresh faced. But in terms of conversations with anyone who is in like customs or border enforcement, I had an entirely pleasant interaction with the guy who was just asking me questions. And they were very simple questions of just like, oh, how long are you going to be here? Is this your first time? Like, who's the group you're traveling with? And I hadn't memorized my speech going in, and I didn't have all those details down. And he was incredibly just like, oh, it's okay, And then I explained that I was here out of solidarity. that I was, here to learn more about the island, learn more about the socialist process. I mentioned some of the places that we were going to be visiting, just the ones that I could remember. And he was like, "Oh, great! Like that's, we're glad you're here." And then just helped, got my passport stamped, and I moved along. In terms of like comparing that, pardon?
wanted to give a little more detail in that I didn't know you'd been pulled aside, and
Neither.
I don't have any experience of it. What happened? Did they you were in line and they said, "Hey, come here," and took you into a room, or what?
Oh no, it was so much less dramatic than that. When the woman at the customs, like, I want to call it a toll booth. I don't know if that actually feels like
the
a
little
toll
booth
booth.
they're in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she like saw my passport when I gave it to her, and then just flagged some guy over who, like in the US, I'm sure that guy would have had a German Shepherd on a leash and like had like a big gun or whatever. But the guy was just in a very casual outfit. And yeah, I probably didn't tell all of you because I wasn't rattled by it at all. It was sort of like it felt very routine, and it felt it was not hostile. And I compare that to an experience I had when I was going to Honduras a couple months prior for the being an election observer there, which was an openly hostile interaction. It was like, that was where I got like pulled into the other room, myself and the other observers. It was in a hot room. They knew we were coming, and they made us sit and wait as they did a photocopy of like every document that they possibly could have asked us for. And we sat there for like, some people sat there for many hours. I was at the end, so I only sat there for about an hour. But it was just like very hostile, and those were men with guns. And this was very like, yeah, it was much more laid back. And I think once he realized the purpose of the trip, that it wasn't just for rum and cigars, but that it was out of a sense of solidarity. And I was going to be doing, going to museums and meeting with people in the government. I think I was treated that way. So yeah, that is all to say that Cuba does want you to travel. They do want to be able to capture your hard currency. That's such a economic, like rational way to put it, but that's part of it. But then part of it is also they want the solidarity that comes with it as well. They want people to come to the island and see the progress that they've made in direct democracy, see the progress they've made in popular education, see the progress in healthcare that they've made, the social progress. And they want people to share that with the world. And I guess we're doing our little part here with our friends from Duluth. So yeah, I again highly recommend it. And as a first time Cuba traveler during the pandemic, it was seamless. It was a seamless travel, and it's crazy how to think there's a socialist country and a revolution that's 60 miles off the coast of the US. And it is not something that people do more often. And it's much more beautiful than Cancun. That's my last plug.
Well, you said the solidarity and the money. The fact is they are taking a big hit from this U.S. blockade, right? And because there was no travel during COVID and it was cut back anyway, they really do want our dollars. I mean, they really do need our dollars. And in a way, it's kind of like giving a contribution to, we give contributions to organizations and support our organizations. And in a way, it's like that. We go and we do a little economic support of the revolution, and they really need it.
There's a comment that somebody made on Facebook. Does anybody want to respond to that? It's kind of interesting. This Treasury Department said they couldn't go as a journalist in 1991. I don't remember what administration that would have been under, but
1991 was that? What was that? That was the Gulf War. That would have been George H.W.
Oh, okay, yeah. It was tough going. Yeah.
we have two new people before we go on to Joe. We have Kim came on and Nancy. Do you want to just go ahead and introduce yourselves? Kim, you go first and then.
Yeah, my name is Kim. I've been with SCOTA for a few years now, and so I'm really appreciative. I didn't get to go on the trip with them, but hoping to go soon. And so I'm really looking forward to going, and I'm really happy that we're doing this kind of meeting to get other people interested and get some of the basic questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And Nancy, would you like to introduce yourself?
You don't have to.
Are you? Okay, then we'll go on with Joe.
Okay. I was told to talk about a trip I made in January with Nachito Herrera, a Cuban musician who emigrated here, lives in Minneapolis now. He performs regularly at the Dakota. And he was headlining a jazz festival in Havana at the end of January. And we went down together with a humanitarian organization called Matter, which is headquartered in Twin Cities. They took 2 plane loads of medical aid to Cuba. That's a massive amount. These were like 737s, big planes. So Nachito was greeted there like a hero. The Cuban press was all there. The closing concert, one of the people that was with our group was Marilyn, I forget her last name. She's a conductor with the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra, and she conducted several songs. The last concert of the festival, and Miguel Diaz-Canel was in attendance at that concert too. So that was nice. And we went to some of the same kind of places that you'll be going with Proximity Cuba. Now, I want to spend some time talking about my way back, because I did get held up at the Miami airport. I noticed the immigration guy, after he punched in my name and passport number, he goes and confers with the other guy. And like I said, I have about 12 trips to Cuba, including 5 travel challenges, which is where we go in open defiance of the government's travel ban. So other people are not going to have so much of that stuff on your resume, new people traveling to Cuba. But so he kept me there, and they brought in another guy who pulled out a form. They filled out a little bit of it. And I was held up maybe for somewhere 20, 30 minutes, not a real long time, but it was more than long enough to cause me to, for sure, miss my connecting flight, which I was about to probably miss anyway. So that meant this was 9, 10 o'clock at night. That was the last flight to Minneapolis. So I had to spend the night in Miami. And it brings up a point in general about connecting flights, because regardless of Cuba, the U.S. airlines industry is in disarray now. They have a shortage of employees, and they're canceling and delaying flights. While I was logging in for this, a little news thing popped up in the corner about U.S. pilots protesting understaffing. I didn't catch what airline that was, but so it'll be important in scheduling any trips to have plenty of several hours at least in between connecting flights, and maybe try to cut down those connecting flights as much as possible. So anyway, that's what I have to say. Well, it's unlikely that people will get hassled like that, but it is doesn't hurt to have that in the back of your mind that that could happen. And it's better to be prepared like Simon was and to not be questioned like that February trip. They shot us through there. And that's better than somebody being sort of caught unawares by particularly obnoxious customs agent or something.
Thanks, Joe. Anybody, go ahead. Just go ahead and ask your question. You can raise your hand or just ask it or make a comment or whatever. Anybody want to say anything?
Kim's watching Facebook, I think, to make sure she catches any comments there or questions.
I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Actually.
Please, go ahead, Brian.
So yeah, they're not necessarily related to each other, but just kind of you guys said that, like, you know, you can't bring cigars or rum back right now. I hadn't thought about that. I was actually going to bring back some Cuban cigars or something from Ecuador, and like, oh, maybe not. But I mean, how does that? Is it just cigars and rum, or is it other stuff? I mean, are there things you can't bring back, or what is it with cigars and rum? I mean, I don't know.
Good question.
Yeah,
I'm not aware of anything else you can't bring back.
Well, there was in the past. In the past, you couldn't bring back lots of that. When I was talking about that trip,
Oh,
I
right.
came back through from Thunder Bay. That was a period where you couldn't bring anything. You could bring back posters and books,
yeah.
and that was it.
Well, it
And I
sounds
think
like-
you could bring back artwork, and that now you can bring back, at least you could bring back a chocolate bar now, and they wouldn't confiscate it from you.
Unless they were hungry.
Okay.
So
it's really just a-
changes. It constantly changes. I mean, that's the thing about travel to Cuba is
Mhm.
it has nothing to do with Cuba. It has to do with the US. There's a constant change all the time.
I think it's also just a symbolic thing that rum and cigars are
Yeah, that's why it's
so emblematic of Cuba. It's just a nasty thing that they decide, and you know, they make money from it, obviously. So no, you can't go to Cuba and get cigars. Why would you even want to? It's a filthy place. Whatever.
right.
One
Why
thing to
would you
look out
want to
for,
get any
though,
of that delicious rum?
the only questions you really are required to answer are the standard ones on the standard immigration form. But one of the questions on there is, have you visited a farm? And you want to, if that question is put to you, you want to say no, that you have not been to a farm.
Yeah.
Or you'll be in a world of hurt if you told me you went to a farm in Cuba.
Kind of regardless of whether or not you
Yeah,
went to a farm.
Yeah.
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 Go to a farm. You will go to a farm.
Okay. Of course
We
not.
went
didn't
to
go
a farm. We went to a farm.
Sure, you go to an organic farm or
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I just something popped
you're gonna
up.
go to a garden, not a farm.
Okay.
I think maybe the cigar restriction has been lifted.
No.
It just popped up.
Absolutely not.
I think it just popped up. Is it legal? It says,
Who's saying that?
I am getting it up here now. This is Quora. No, that's a long time ago.
And it has to be the Department of Treasury who says it's
Okay.
legal. OFAC.
Did you have another question, Brian?
Oh yeah, I've got a few others. I'm kind of curious about the money currency exchange and all that, and just so I mean, you can't use U.S. dollars. You can use Canadian dollars. How does it like? Do you just exchange it for Cuban cash then, or how does that?
Yeah.
That or you just give it, pay it straight away.
What do you mean, Sarah?
You just gave, when we tipped off them, we just gave dollars.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, they do. A lot of people like the hard currency. So they talked about this at the NNOC meeting. There was a fairly extensive discussion on travel. And yeah, so officially, you know, they don't want dollars, but you know, in practice, it's, you know, they wanted anything when we were there. But again, that changes. So, you know, you might have to figure it out, you know, a couple of weeks before you go
Well,
in.
we couldn't, when we left, and we were supposed to get money at some kiosk, weren't we? There was some complicated thing we were gonna do in the airport.
Oh, in the beginning,
all-
yeah, it was
That
those
all fell
cards.
apart. That all fell
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah.
And we really, and then if you had to have the right amount of money, a lot kind of became a problem, but.
Well, I
The
guess
fir-
what I'm
This was
asking,
the first time I've ever had the travel coordinator person actually exchange the dollars. Usually you have to go to some kind of an exchange place to, you know, like any other country. And you gotta go someplace and exchange out currencies. So it's,
Usually at the airport, you could do it.
you can do it, but there are ones on the street. There are
Yeah,
a lot of kind of
So-
official exchange places on the street that you can go, but they're not. You can spend your dollars too. That's what we're trying to say.
and it all works
American
itself out
dollars?
as you're
Yeah.
going through it, you know.
Even though they say no, you can.
Yeah.
otherwise otherwise you exchange it for Canadian dollars or euros, and that's obviously acceptable, right? Or
Mhm.
For exchange,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Canadians, euros, probably other things too, but that's what they told us to bring. And I, you know, I brought a bunch of dollars too, which was useful to
Yeah, I
have.
use my dollars more than I used.
Yeah, I think so. So,
Yeah.
I had all three currencies and I used the dollars the most.
And we were told we weren't gonna be using dollars,
Yeah.
so that,
Well, at the NNOC meeting, they're saying how as solidarity activists, we want to go through the government exchange and not change a bunch of dollars on the black market.
Oh, on the street, no.
Yeah, but it's true. I had a taxi driver and he told me the fare was $10. He said it just that way, and that it was not,
Yeah.
oh, he didn't mention anything about Cuban currencies.
yeah. Well, they need currency too, you know, at some of the dollar stores, I think still. So it's complicated. That's what they say a lot.
And you know, like in restaurants, if, you know, like when we were as a groups, we would tip together as a group and we give them dollars. We wouldn't give them other currencies. So you kind of want to bring everything with you.
yeah.
Right.
Other questions?
How does it work with traveling as a group? I know you guys kind of talked about different experiences going through customs, and it almost sounded like you're not traveling as a group through the airport and through customs.
Oh, no.
We were going in different directions, so, you know, we're lining up in different lines. So we don't go as a group through customs in, I mean, because not everybody's going through Miami. Some of them are going through this city or that city, and then, you know,
We're sitting at different places.
so we're not as a group when we don't go through customs as a group. So
There were a bunch of us from Minnesota, but the rest of our group wasn't, so.
and the airport was so messed up in Miami. I lost track of you
Right.
guys, and we were all, you know, grabbing our suitcases, and they were in a hurry to push us through.
Yeah, you just go through on your own as you're seated on that plane.
But I've never been questioned, you know, it's like 7 times I've been there now. I've never had anything confiscated or questioned.
Right. So are you
Were
just
you
me-
on that trip where we went through Toronto?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
'Cause they took my rum, they took my.
They didn't open my trunk. I was driving back and they didn't, yeah, they probably would
no,
have.
you're talking about a different trip. No,
Oh,
that one, they didn't open the trunk. We weren't really on a legal trip, so that time, but I'm
We
talking
all
about
got
when we
sort of
went,
illegally.
it was through Pastors for Peace and we went through Toronto and in Toronto. The bizarre thing is US Customs is there in Toronto going through all of your
Yeah.
stuff. And they took away stuff from me there and they questioned me a lot. And some of the people, they didn't.
So are you just meeting at the hotel, or what are you doing? I mean, just meeting in Havana somewhere? Or?
They pick us up. Well, in this trip, they picked us up at the airport. They had two times they came to the airport to pick us up. So when it's groups, they generally find out when you're arriving and then they send transportation to get you to the hotel. So it's all, it's all pretty much taken care of. Eventually you all congeal as a group when you get into the transportation.
So I'm still not clear then, do we have to buy our tickets separately?
Well, it's sometimes it's included flights from the US, but in this case, we had to buy everybody was responsible for buying their own airline tickets, including between Miami and Havana.
But this upcoming trip, we're not sure. It might be that way and it might not.
Correct,
No.
correct. If we're still waiting to hear from our organizers, so, I can't say with certainty that it actually will happen, and that's probably still going to be the case. But I don't know, like Pastors for Peace, I think they have enough people to fill an airplane probably. So
Yeah,
they
that's good.
charter it, so that would
Yeah,
be
they charter the plane. Yeah.
So it can vary.
The we figured out for the people from Minneapolis or from Minnesota, we all kind of went, I don't know if all of us did, but most of us went on the same plane, and we figured out the arrangements before, and then we just individually purchased our tickets.
And we had to stay at a hotel overnight. I mean,
Yeah.
you could travel, get more direct flights a few years ago, but now we had to go through, where did we go through? North Carolina's, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Going there and
Miami.
Washington DC coming back.
Yeah, yeah. You could have done it all in one trip, but it would have been pretty grueling.
So typically you fly to, I was assuming it would be Miami, but it could be somewhere else, stay overnight there, and then one more flight to Havana.
Yeah, so there are, like, Houston has direct flights to Cuba, and a couple other cities do too.
Yeah, but it's just picking up again now after, the whole mess that
Right.
we've been in, and they haven't probably got it worked out that well. Hopefully you would. I think I've been on trips where you only had to take 2 jumps, right? I mean, you could go directly to Miami. Yeah, and there are now more flights. They're allowing they could only go to Havana under the Trump years, but now they can fly to different airports in Cuba, so that makes it a little different too.
I just went to Skyscanner
Oh,
and and they're like for $370
for what?
From where? To
from
where?
here to Havana.
Round trip?
Really?
Yeah, I put in round trip
Wow.
Round trip from here to Havana for
That's
$370?
amazing.
on American Airlines.
Let's go right now.
No, this was I put it in for November when we would be going.
That sounds really hard to, you sure? Well,
Look it up. That's what it's saying. Last 3 tickets, so people are really planning ahead.
yeah.
But and now
I
that
noticed.
it's let's see how many from at 6:34 a.m. and you get into Havana that night.
What? Wow.
I noticed when I was in Miami coming down here that that there were, I think there were like 3 or 4 different gates with flights going to Havana.
Yeah.
So
All the Cubans go back and forth a lot.
well, there were a lot of non-Cubans too. I mean, I heard them, like Americans. So I was kind of surprised. I don't.
A whole bunch of American flights.
Mhm.
Leaving at 7:25 in the morning and getting in at 8:06 p.m.
That'd be great, yeah.
Well, I also thought Delta had direct flights. but
Not
that might be
anymore.
American.
Not,
Oh,
they
okay.
used to. They used to have great flights. I mean, you go you get on here, you go to Miami, and they were convenient, and then you got on the Miami flight right away, and
Well, I think American is one of the most discombobulated airlines right
That's-
now too.
That's the problem,
yeah.
but they're all kind of a close second.
Well,
so,
everything is gonna get canceled now, so.
yeah,
Everything, okay.
we're not gonna leave the call on that, no.
No,
Other comments or questions?
Well, I did watch the NOC meeting this past Saturday, and they had really good information about traveling to Cuba, which I know I wasn't in the first part of the call, but I think they did talk about COVID, and then they were also talking about some other like legal questions that, of course, I can't remember, but I'm sure the group that we would go with, they would have that information, that more
yes,
detailed information that we may not even necessarily think about to ask.
Mhm.
But yeah, but when Simon was talking about being stopped and interrogated, they kind of said the same thing. It's like if you do get asked, don't freak out, just answer them calmly. So that's something that you don't really think about flying, because we don't fly that often. So I thought that was an interesting
well,
detail.
I think one of the things is flying into Cuba, you don't think you're gonna have questions. I got questioned once going into Cuba, and they were just wondering why I had gone there so many times.
Because I love it.
So it was just kind of a, it sounds like Simon, they just thought, oh, there's this young kid, we don't
Who
know.
knows?
Who knows?
Well,
So,
because, the government's sending it. I can't even remember now his name, the guy who was in prison for a few years and got traded for the Cuban Five. Remember the cause celebre that happened in the United States? He was smuggling in the illegal satellite equipment,
yeah, right.
What was his name? Do you remember? He was
I don't remember
Gross.
exact- Oh,
Who?
yeah.
What?
Alan Gross.
Alan
Alan
Gross, right?
Gross, yeah,
He
Right.
came here and spoke one time.
that's
Huh.
Greg and
really,
I went there. And he made up a bunch of BS about how he was supposedly badly treated in the prison. He was kept in solitary confinement. And then 2 minutes later, he's talking about how he had these wonderful conversations with other prisoners. Well, how are you doing that in solitary confinement? But anyway.
Who brought him to town?
Alan Gross was the name of the guy.
who
Yeah.
knows?
He was
Another
the
comment from
CIA agent.
Facebook.
Okay. Oh, Facebook.
The one who posted about he said he has
Yeah.
Cuban cigars sticking out of his shirt pocket.
That's great. Good for
Oh.
him.
But that was on Pastures for Peace and the Third Friendship.
Yeah.
So that would have been an early one. Yeah.
Yeah, in those days, you could bring in cigar. I mean, when I first went to Cuba, you could bring in bottles of rum and, cigars
This
and,
was Pastures for Peace, which was going, avowedly ill,
right. But even the first trip I went on was
Yeah.
legal, and it was when Carter was president, and he had legalized travel to Cuba for
yeah.
about 4
Adam's got
weeks.
something here too that, yeah, you couldn't indicate you spent money there. Yeah.
Yeah. But you could bring in, I remember bringing in lots of rum and cigars,
Mhm.
but not now.
Oh, maybe that'll happen.
Is that NNOC program? Is that up so people can go look at it if they want to?
I don't think so. I don't
They
think
said
they,
they'd send the link to everybody who.
yeah, and they haven't
I
yet,
haven't seen
so.
it yet. We'll let you know when it. Art Heitzer is a National Lawyers Guild guy in Milwaukee who's always the most knowledgeable one, and he gave a little disquisition on
Mhm.
travel.
Well, and Sharon was chairing it, and she participated in stuff
Oh.
about travel.
Who was
Yeah.
Sharon? What?
Sharon Wilson.
Sharon,
Oh, Sharon, yeah.
yeah.
Sharon was the representative on our trip from
Yeah.
US-based travel agency. She made us legal.
So are there any other questions?
Yeah. Comments?
Well, I hope we hear
Well,
back from Proximity Cuba pretty soon. So
Okay, yeah, I'm sure we will. I mean, I can't imagine that.
that they don't want to set up a trip for us.
No, I can't believe, no, because he was really enthusiastic in his,
don't
I'd
know what else.
appreciate if the travel agent arranged as much as possible. I mean, if I
They
didn't have to
do.
buy my own ticket and whatever, that would be nice.
They do arrange. I was amazed on this trip that they arranged everything.
except the tickets. Did you just
Except
say?
the airplane tickets. That
Yeah,
was
I
the only
think you said
thing.
it would be nice for them to do
Yeah.
that. But we'll do that together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can help
Yeah,
people get their tickets
Yeah.
and stuff, so.
Yeah.
If we'd be on the same flight or something.
yeah, we did all go on the.
We all went together,
pretty much.
And that's helpful too, to all be.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
just
we
have
got
to get to
everybody's
the
name.
Twin Cities,
Do we have everybody's name? So when we
yeah.
hear from them, we'll know how many people are on Facebook.
I'm not.
There was,
No, this is on right now.
There were
Well,
four.
no,
last
no,
time.
I'm on
there was
Zoom.
there was a total of 5 on Facebook at one point.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
Well, we'll post it all over the place
Did
once.
anybody,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Did
If,
anybody else
yeah,
want
I mean, you know,
any closing comments?
it's
Probably.
fun. I
Yeah.
always have a good time when I'm
Yeah.
there.
mhm. Better to go in the winter than the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It gets a little hot for us, well,
yeah, it's really
our
hot in the
typical
middle of
weather
the
is like
summer,
now anyway, I guess.
right?
Yeah, no. Does that do it, everybody?
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Hasta luego.
Yeah.
Hasta luego.
Okay,
Oh,
how about-
Well, we should say for
Yes, we
folks that
have to
may not
say.
know,
Yes,
we Friday morning, 10 o'clock Central Time, we have a SCOTA meeting. So if you're interested, also, we should get your email and send you our Zoom link information.
Mhm.
Or it's on our Facebook page.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we'll go out with the chant, huh? Cuba si porque o no.
They don't know.
Cuba C.
but see,
Okay,
like,
okay.
you know,
They don't know.
Oh.
Right. All right.